First thing I want to talk about is you've been hearing more and more lately. I've addressed this in the past. The media, the financial media, the pieces of garbage, scumbags in the media who are bought, owned, and paid for by corporations, by the banks. They want to deceive you. They want to manipulate you. And I wanted to point out just another example of how they're doing this. In a previous video, I talked about how some numbskull, I think John Carney, wrote an article trying to convince people that it was cocaine abuse that caused the financial crisis. That way, it was due to drug abuse. It was due to incompetence, not fraud. That would be a way of shifting the burden of responsibility away from the legal system into the hands of the taxpayers, right? This is why, of course, no one's in jail, because the media has dumbed down everyone to think that it wasn't fraud, it was incompetence, it was drug abuse, it was greediness. Now, it was fraud. I wrote about it in detail in America's Financial Apocalypse in 2006. If I knew about it back then, you better believe it was fraud. Anyway, it's a recent article here by Rick Newman. This guy is a complete loser. Just want to mention that. He is a big loser. He's a low IQ, and of course he's Jewish, which is why he has a job in the media. Rick Newman, I believe, used to work for Business Week or one of those stupid magazines. Of course, he got laid off, and he was sucked up by Yahoo. Okay, Yahoo has sucked up a lot of these unemployed journalists, and of course, I've talked about this in the past. Yahoo exists almost exclusively for the purpose of employing Jewish individuals. It's just a fact. I've been following Yahoo for well over a decade, and I've watched, and it's kind of funny how the more focus on employing Jews, the content has gone down into the gutter, which explains in large part why Yahoo is in the toilet getting ready to be flushed. Which, by the way, I haven't had a chance to make a video on this, but I want to just mention one thing before I get into this Fannie Freddie article. There's been a lot of hype created around Yahoo over the past year or so, and specifically the Jewish-run media has celebrated Melissa Mayer, the recently appointed CEO of Yahoo from Google. Well, of course, she's Jewish. And the reality is that they have come in and basically said, well, look, she's doing such a great job. Yahoo stock price is moving up. It's $35. You know, it was only $23 before, and so forth, right? Well, what they don't mention is that the only reason she has done nothing. She's useless. And I'm going to go ahead and say this. I'm sorry for the female listeners out there, but females just can't cut it as CEOs. Now, consolation to this whole statement is that the vast majority of CEOs out there, at least in America, are useless. And the vast majority are, of course, males. But I think that females just don't have what it takes. I have yet to see a competent female CEO of a major company. And for those of you who are have been brainwashed by the political correctness virus to think that men and women are equal, well, that's just simply not true. And you don't remember your high school geometry. Equal means the exact same. Equivalency is the term used for something of equal value. Men and women are different. Each sex has different abilities, different strengths, different weaknesses. Now, of course, the Jewish propaganda wants you to think that there's no difference in the sexes. That's a whole nother topic of discussion. The point is that I don't think that females can run companies. They can do other things better than males, but running companies is not one of them. You can bitch and moan and complain and call me chauvinist. I really don't care. It just shows that you've been brainwashed. Now, the point is that Melissa Mayer, she's done nothing. The only reason why Yahoo stock has gone up is because of the investment that Yahoo holds in Alibaba, the currently privately held internet B2B company from China. That's the only reason why. They're anticipating the IPO. Alibaba is worth billions of dollars. Yahoo, I believe, owned 50% or more stake in Alibaba. So an investment was made some 10 years ago or so by Jerry Yang and some of the other individuals, executives in Yahoo at the time. And of course, Alibaba is slated to make an IPO debut pretty soon. I think Yahoo sold off about 10% of what they had, so they have about 40%. That's the only reason why. Now, it's shocking to me that anyone would even want to boost the share price, because that assumes that Yahoo is going to deliver the cash to shareholders. I've sat here and watched Yahoo's cash holdings go from 10, 12, 14 billion dollars over the years down to almost nothing due to useless acquisitions, overvalued acquisitions. It's been a complete, it's been managerial fraud. So shareholders actually think they're going to get these dividends. They're going to squander them. They're going to squander the billions of dollars. They do need to deliver the dividends to shareholders to compensate for the complete failure of this company. But anyway, all that aside, the main issue now is Rick Newman in this article on Fannie and Freddie. And the subtitle, which you can't see here, it talks about how the government's ripping Fannie and Freddie off, right? Because, of course, all profits from Fannie and Freddie are going back to the U.S. Treasury to pay off the bailout. And so it turns out that the bailout's been paid off, and now Fannie and Freddie are delivering a surplus. So the article talks about how they're helping to pay down the national debt. Overall, the whole article is basically positioned to make you think that bailouts are good. And so, you know, if you read the comments, people are talking about, oh, this is shareholder fraud. You know, we have to sue Fannie and Freddie. You know, this is taking away from shareholders. It shouldn't be this, whatever. They're missing the point. Rick Newman is trying to make you think that bailouts are good. Look, they were successful. They were so successful that they're helping to pay down our national debt. You see, because the financial media, they want their partner in crime, Wall Street, the financial industry, to benefit, to be poised for the next bailout, which will happen at some point. There will be another financial crisis at some point. I can't tell you when. Now, if you ask the Peter Schiffs of the world, they're going to tell you it's coming. It's coming. It's right around the corner, right? I mean, we all know those guys are a joke. But anyway, the point is that you need to understand the manipulation that's going on here. You need to call these motherfuckers out, okay? Because they are your worst enemy. These scumbags working for the media, they're worse than the bankers. They're worse than the financial industry. So that's the first point I wanted to make. The next topic, of course, is that Bitcoin recently collapsed. I believe down to below $200. This Mt. Gox, this Bitcoin exchange, supposedly the largest one in the world, with a 35% or so market share, located in Japan, collapsed, filed for bankruptcy. Every single media outlet, and I mentioned this before, but the media pumped Bitcoin. They pumped a irrefutable scam, a Ponzi scheme, a fraud. There's no doubt. Now, anyone out there who is competent in finance knows that Bitcoin is a scam. Okay? You don't even need to be that competent in finance or investments. You just have common sense, right? It's a scam. Yet the media has been pumping it and pumping it. I want you folks to understand another example of how the media is trying to screw you. Pump and dump. Stay away from the media. You're going to get screwed. That is a fact. Now, many of you might recall I did a couple of videos, at least 2, maybe 3 on Bitcoin approximately a year ago, warning everyone that it was a scam, warning everyone that it was vulnerable to security breaches, warning everyone that this thing would end very badly, warning everyone to stay out, warning everyone that Max Kaiser was pumping this garbage like he pumped this whole silver thing. And of course, we're seeing the beginning here, the beginning perhaps of the end. It doesn't matter whether Bitcoin, the end is near, or it's in a year or 2 years. I can tell you that there's going to be much more fraud. Now, even before this situation, there had been a lot of Ponzi schemes and fraudulent activities behind Bitcoin. There's all kinds of fraud. The problem is that for those of you who hate the bankers, who hate the Federal Reserve, who hey, financial industry, hey, I'm in the same camp. But that doesn't mean that you go for the alternative. That doesn't mean that just because you don't like the Federal Reserve's control over the US dollar, doesn't mean that you align yourselves with the guys that are talking about it being bad and buy gold. They're trying to exploit you. The Fed is bad. Buy gold from me. I'll charge you 10%, right? So don't take that simpleton mentality. Don't fall into that trap. Just because you have someone out there calling out the criminals doesn't mean they're not criminals. And if, as a matter of fact, and I've told this to people recently, if it's the establishment versus the alternative guys out there, stick with the establishment. You're going to suffer much less, I'll guarantee you. Okay? So let me give you a couple examples. Most of you probably know about the problems with the food and the water throughout the world, basically, right? More and more pesticides are being used, more and more in the food. There's, of course, the genetically modified organisms, which, by the way, many people who are familiar with my extensive science background have asked me to comment on GMOs. It's kind of funny, isn't it, how all these con men who have no training in molecular genetics or any other branch of science, they're talking about GMOs. Why? These are the same guys talking about gold, right? They don't want to talk to me. You understand, folks? No matter how good my track record is, no matter how well I'm qualified, the people out there who control the exposure, they don't want you to hear from me because I don't have the agendas. I'm not a con man. I'm not a crook. I represent the truth, the unbiased truth. I don't advertise. That means I don't have agendas. I don't sell food. I don't sell securities. I don't sell precious metals. You understand? That's the deal. The media is designed to promote con artists. That is a fact. Mainstream and alternative. So the point is that if you have a choice of eating the food that comes out of the whole establishment, of course I've talked about this before, the establishment is kind of a three-tiered apparatus. Corporations, the mega corporations, the media, and the government, right? That's the global fascist apparatus. That's globalization. Okay. If that's your choice, and keep in mind, you've got the critics out there and the so-called alternative media, which is really 99% of the alternative media is remanufactured mainstream media. I've gotten into that before in the past. Maybe I'll talk about it sometime in the future. But you're much better off with the establishment's food and water source than you are the alternative, right? You're much better off eating the food that you can buy at the grocery stores than the food that's being offered by the con artists like Alex Jones. You need to understand that. Just like the currency system, you're much better off with the dollar, with the U.S. stock market, than you are with gold and silver and Bitcoin. Okay? So it's kind of the lesser of two evils. It's kind of like how, I don't deal with credit card merchants because the credit card merchant industry is boiler room. I only deal with PayPal. I don't like PayPal in many regards, but it's kind of the best of the worst, right? So you need to understand that everything is relative and you need to pick sides very carefully. And I'm here to tell you, almost invariably, and I'll go ahead and just say invariably because everyone always seems to think that they have the exception, right? Well, my guy's, they all suck, but my guy's good, right? So I'll go ahead and say invariably, you need to stick with the establishment solution or the establishment, what they're offering you. You're much better off than going after these con artists who point out the problems and then give you a solution that's even worse. Perfect example is Alex Jones and his Tangy Tangerine. This dietary supplement, this health nutrient supplement that he's pitching. And by the way, I've been doing some research on the company, Longevity, and this so-called Dr. Wallach, a Jewish individual who's calling himself a doctor, which I guess he can. Problem is that when you come out and market yourself as someone who can provide cures to cancer and diabetes overnight, And when you call yourself a doctor, people assume that you're a medical doctor. He's a veterinarian. Anyway, I've investigated publicly traded company, a lot of fraud going on, and I'm going to uncover that in the future. I may just work undercover with securities regulators, I don't know. But anyway, the point is that Alex Jones, he tells you that the elites want to kill you all. Never mind that it doesn't make sense, right? I mean, does it make sense that all the wealthy people want the slaves to die, right? There'll be no tax dollars. There'll be no economic growth, right? But Alex Jones says that the New World Order wants to kill you all. And they're doing it with the food and the vaccinations, right? So he wants to sell you water filters and all kinds of nutritional food supplements and food alternatives, right? Well, Tangy Tangerine is one of those. It's made by this Longevity company, right? Well, Tangy Tangerine contains mercury and arsenic and lead and other toxic elements. So this is a perfect example of you're better off, folks. You're better off with the establishment. You're better off going to Whole Foods or Kroger's or wherever and getting your food than you are getting it through Alex Jones and Mike Adams, this health ranger con artist. Okay, so let me get to the last issue here. And once again, I'm going to go into these things in more detail when I have more time. But I wanted to go into, I haven't addressed it specifically. I'm going to go into this in the Encyclopedia of Bozos and Snake Oil Salesmen. And I'll also do some videos probably for members only, clients only in the future. I'm just now starting to scratch the surface in terms of research. Because keep in mind, folks, I could hire a staff of 10 or 20 individuals researching full-time all these con men, and we would still not be able to keep up. I don't focus on researching con men. I already can look at their pitch and tell you whether or not they're a con man. I've got that much experience. I focus on providing world-class investment and economic research. And my clientele is global. My clientele consists of the average Joe, all the way up through professional fund managers. Okay, so I focus on that. But I also feel the personal need to devote as much time as possible to informing individuals. And I can tell you, it's not just Joe Sixpack who's being fooled by these con men. You have very sophisticated investors in some cases that are being fooled as well. And the reason why is because a large amount of this con game, it doesn't matter how smart you are. You know, I just got an email recently from an individual who's a member, and they said it was the best money they had ever spent, referring to membership. And I should post the email, maybe I'll do it later, but they said basically that that they thought they were smart enough to avoid con men, but I woke them up. Best money they ever spent accessing the research. And I'm not even talking about the investment research. I'm talking about the Encyclopedia of Bozos, Snake Oil Salesmen, Hacks, and False Heroes. That's a huge publication that's available only to members and clients. And that's where we go through and expose the tactics and prove these guys are con men. And the list is in the hundreds, and it will continue to expand. And so he's like everyone else. You know, you think you're smarter. You think, you know, you're a smart person. Hey, that's fine. But there's a different type of intelligence, and it's based on your experience dealing with the deviant psychology in the investment world, in the consumer finance world. And once you have crossed that barrier, once you've gone over that fence and you're on the other side, then I think that you're going to experience an awakening. And I think that lesson is going to help you for the rest of your life. It will help you avoid being taken by these con men. And the amount of money that you will save is priceless. It's impossible to know how much, but it's probably in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions, if you include all types of cons and frauds. And of course, we're not just talking about your retirement assets or your investable assets, but we're also talking about real estate purchases, consumer items, and things of that nature. Anyway, so the point I wanted to make in closing with this video is I'm just now starting to come across, because I don't focus on these guys in this realm, but I do try and get to it when I can. And I've talked about Doug Casey in the past. And keep in mind, I'm compiling, I have hundreds of files on people I've not talked about. It takes a long time to compile enough material on these individuals. Hundreds of files on individuals. One of the individuals I have not talked about, who's related in a business sense to Doug Casey, is named Jeff Berwick. He has this website called Dollar Vigilante. And of course, Jeff Berwick is just like Doug Casey in that, and people, keep in mind, I want you to write this down so that you will not forget it. Websites, publications that are interviewing these people, that are pumping these people, that are highlighting these people, it's all the same. Gravy Train, the Gold Bug Network. You need to ban these sites. They're out to screw you. They are pumping con men. They're pumping people who want to screw you. Zero Hedge, same bullshit. They feature the same con men. It's the circle of con men. You understand? I know this because I've been watching this for a number of years. The same individuals keep appearing. Why is that? Right? It's a network. It's the flooding approach. Okay? The same guys. Now, you do have some portions of disagreement in some things. For instance, this whole gold pumping movement, you're going to have some guys that are gold pumpers but are also going to embrace Bitcoin, right? So there are some overlaps there. But the overall theme is anti-government, anti-Federal Reserve, anti-stock market, right? Remember, you're better off with the establishment. I don't like the Fed. There's no one that's been more critical and vocal about the criminal Jewish mafia-run Federal Reserve and financial industry than me. There's no one that's been more critical. Okay? Because I actually come out and name who's behind it all. But the fact is that they run the show. Okay? You can't defeat them. You got to play the game. All right? And if you think you can defeat them by putting your assets into gold and silver and buying real estate in Uruguay, you're in for a rude awakening. You're going to lose your ass. So I wanted to address the aspect of Doug Casey that I have not addressed before. Doug Casey, of course, is a copy editor. For those of you who don't know what copy editing is, it's basically a scam industry that gives you fluff words and is a psychological play. It doesn't really give you any valuable content. It's a bunch of crap. It's a huge industry. It's kind of a boiler room. But these people that are employed in this industry are craftful in word games, and they are able to write pieces that appear to have content, but the real content is not there. It's missing. It's very superficial. It's garbage. Anyway, Doug Casey runs a copy editing firm. He calls it a research firm, but it's really a copy editing and investment promotional firm, stock promoting firm, similar to many other individuals in that network. So what Doug Casey does is he sells advertisements, and he also pumps guys like Peter Schiff. He interviews these guys, makes it look like, oh, wow, they're being interviewed. Okay, well, what do they have to say? To make it, they're basically creating shit media, trash media, and they're pumping it all over the place, making it look like people want to hear what these guys have to say, making it look like they're relevant. You see, that's what they're doing. But in addition to that, because I didn't really delve into Doug Casey, but what I found out is Doug Casey, he lives in Uruguay, right? He lives in Uruguay, and he's been promoting all these real estate investments in South America. As a matter of fact, Doug Casey was pumping Argentina. The country that's in the toilet, getting flushed. He was putting people into Argentinian real estate. He's got a development he's partnering with. And I'm going to go into that in the future. In a place called Salta, in the middle of nowhere. In the middle of nowhere. He has these nice pictures. He doesn't tell you the full story. Folks, there's three things that we are certain of in this world. Okay? Now, you all know it's death and taxes. What's the third thing? The third thing is that there is inevitably always going to be a crisis in South America. South America will always have a cycle, a perpetual cycle of hyperinflation. If it's not Argentina now, it will be some other country, right? It was Brazil and Argentina a decade ago, right? You understand? And these are people telling you, Doug Casey, Jeff Berwick, and all these. And Jeff Berwick is also in the real estate sales. He wants to sell you real estate, $50,000 for the cheapest acre that he will sell you, up to, I believe, over $100,000. He wants to sell you for an acre of land in Chile. Are you crazy? What? So these are guys that are trying to tell you that America is going to collapse and Canada is going to collapse and move to South America. Yeah. Wake up, people. South America has historically been a place of very, very severe economic, political turmoil. And it will continue to be a place that experiences economic and political turmoil. Okay? So, anyway, I'm going to go into more detail about these losers in the future. But I want you to consider this as a closing thought. Why do you think that Doug Casey and Jeff Berwick are living outside of America? Well, when they pump to you, I don't know if Berwick's involved in penny stock gold miners and silver miners, but I know Doug Casey is, and these guys are getting paid to promote these things, and they're living outside of the U.S., so they're not subject to the types of disclosures and regulatory oversight that someone living in North America would be. So when you get scammed, when you realize that you bought an acre of land from Jeff Berwick for 70 grand in Chile, that's in the middle of nowhere, okay? And keep in mind, 70 grand will buy you some pretty nice real estate in a lot of really nice areas in America, okay? This is Chile, okay? When you realize that you got scammed, you can't go after these guys. They live in Uruguay. They live in Chile. You can't go after them. You understand? They don't have to give you the same types of disclosures. You see? That's why they're living overseas. So I'll get into this in more detail in the future. But for now, I just wanted to give you a heads up on these, I guess, 3 or 4 issues that I've been wanting to talk about. And I wanted to just go ahead and put something out now, unrehearsed, unscripted, so I could get something out before I forgot and before other things hit my plate.